This week on the Hollywood in Toto podcast, Gina Carano fights back against Team Disney. And guess who made it all possible? Come on, just guess. We talk with John Ondrasik from Five for Fighting about his devastating new song, OK, and he blasts musicians for not speaking up against antisemitism. He's right, of course. And we reveal the latest trigger warning outrage, this time courtesy of the Max streaming platform.
Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Before we kick off the show, I'd love it if you subscribe to the Hollywood in Toto podcast. We've got new episodes each Wednesday. The video component is coming oh so soon. And of course, we got bonus episodes too. And if you like what you hear, could you give us a review over at iTunes? Every kind word helps. I've been a Hollywood journalist for, too long now, and I've met some pretty big stars over the years. Will Smith, Tom Hanks, Kevin Spacey. Nothing happened. Just had an interview. Julia Roberts. And no one, and I mean no one, was nicer than Gina Carano. Of course, we all know Gina Carano got dumped by Disney for sharing views on social media that were not aggressively political to the left. They didn't fit the progressive worldview, so they got rid of her. They fired her from The Mandalorian despite the show's just outright success and also the fact that she was a beloved character. Her Cara Dune was a fan favorite. It's still awful to remember her firing. It was just not fair, period. Especially since celebrities have said far, far worse over and again on social media without any punishment whatsoever. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Bette Midler. Carano stood tall through every part of that. And of course, she went on to make Terror on the Prairie for the Daily Wire. And that's where I met her. I was on the set of that film, and she couldn't have been nicer, couldn't have been more gracious, truly. Now, I hung around for a while on the set. I watched her in action. I talked to her directly. I saw her interacting with other journalists, other colleagues on the set, the cast and crew. You get a sense of people. It wasn't just a quick hello, shake your hand and move away. I saw her. She's a nice person. This wasn't an act. And that's why I'm so giddy about her latest role. Plaintiff. Yep, Carano filed a lawsuit this week against both Disney and Lucasfilm for what she says was an unfair firing from The Mandalorian. That's what I say too, but I'm not involved with the suit directly. Now, I'm no legal eagle. It seems like she's got a case, I have to say. You want to hear just one of the bullet points I guarantee her lawyers will bring up? I know she has already. Well, her co-star on The Mandalorian was Pedro Pascal. And one day, Pascal mentioned this on social media. He compared Trump voters to Nazis. I think he quickly took it down, but that's really horrible. It's far worse than anything Carano said on social media. Much, much worse. So for that reason alone, I think I kind of like her chances. But the story gets better. Carano's lawsuit happened thanks to a prompt from and support from, a certain billionaire with a fetish for free speech. Yeah, Elon Musk to the rescue again. Oh, the left is going to hate him even more. I don't know what's going to happen moving forward. I'm no legal expert. Disney's got all the high-priced lawyers money can buy. And at the end of the day, maybe a company can fire someone for a variety of reasons. Maybe that's going to win the day for them. Or Disney will suffer yet another black eye for failing to stand up for hardcore American values and also unfairly smearing an actress in ways that made her toxic to Hollywood Incorporated, because that's exactly what they did. Gina Carano has not worked in a traditional Hollywood production since. So let the battle begin, and I'm so glad Carano's fighting back. Here's your movie trivia question of the week. In a classic scene from When Harry Met Sally, an older woman watches Sally fake a sexual situation in a restaurant, and she tells the waitress, "I'll have what she's having." Great line. But why was that actress important to the movie itself? The answer? At the end of the show. Remember protest songs? The 60s were loaded with them, and they were great. Fortunate Son, Blowin' in the Wind, so many really powerful tracks. And you don't have to be left or right, no matter what you think about them or what the issues were in play. They were great songs. The singers cared about what was going on in the country, and they sang about it. It's what they do. It's powerful. And you think about today, my gosh, there's so much to protest. Media corruption, garden variety corruption, lockdowns, censorship, and of course the rise of antisemitism across the globe and, oh my gosh, happening in the United States after the October 7th attacks by Hamas on Israel. And that's where John Ondrasik comes in. Of course, he's the voice behind Five for Fighting, as the Grammy-nominated act best known for hits like Superman and 100 Miles. Beautiful voice, perfect melodies. Now, John watched President Biden hand Afghanistan back to the Taliban, and he wrote a powerful song about it. It's called Blood on My Hands. He watched Russia's cruel invasion of Ukraine, and again went to his keyboard and wrote another song. This time, Can One Man Save the World? But now he's back with, I think, his most haunting song to date. The name of the song is Okay, and just listen to a little bit of it, and you know it's sung with irony, horror. It's amazing that almost the entire music industry went silent following Hamas's October 7th attacks on Israel. I think Madonna may have said something briefly. I think Bono from U2 may have mentioned the situation and done something to honor those who were lost. But otherwise, just silent. In fact, more singers and songwriters are talking about ceasefire, 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 with nary a word for the hostages or the horrors that went on that day. Not John. It's why I'm so honored to have him on the show and so happy he took some time to speak to me about the creative process behind that song, Okay, and his thoughts on his fellow musicians for refusing to speak up in times of crisis like this. Boy, the singers couldn't stop singing in the 60s, and they can't start right now. Doesn't apply to John. Here's the voice behind Five for Fighting, John Ondrasik. I suspect that you've been as obsessed and outraged about the October 7th attacks and the response and the reactions as I am. Obviously, you made the song about it. When you're making a song, when it has the gravitas of this topic, and you're an artist, how do you fuse those two without losing the artistry, the melody? I mean, it just seems like one of the most challenging propositions to write a song on this topic without being preachy, without the lyrics spelling out your feelings in such detail. I'm not an artist. I'm not a singer. It seems like a really difficult task. You've done it multiple times now. Can you just walk us briefly through that process? Because I know that some songs come to you quickly. Other ones are more work. How did this evolve for you?
That is a good question. Some songs just kind of write themselves. They're visceral reactions. For example, Blood on My Hands about the Afghan withdrawal. That just came from anger and the fact that a friend of mine, was going down to rescue Americans we abandoned, risking her life. So that was just kind of anger. I wanted to name names. Mm-hmm. And before I knew it, I had the song. The Ukraine song also, I think, kind of came very quickly because, frankly, early, in the early weeks of the war, everybody expected Zelensky to be dead because the mercenaries were hunting him. This song was a little different. It evolved over time. I think, the shock of October 7th, the horrors we saw, kind of brought us back to 9/11, brought us back to the Afghanistan withdrawal. But the cultural aftermath kind of took a while, right? We saw kind of the initial celebrations, which I think shocked us. And then came the colleges basically celebrating Hamas and the college presidents kind of excusing the antisemitism. and then the people ripping down posters, Rashida Tlaib refusing to condemn, beheading of babies. But that kind of rolled out, and we really didn't see, I think, some of the moral collapse right away. I think about the media jumping to the Israel missile that hit the hospital that never was, that really inflamed the world. So as these things kind of rolled out, I was kind of just disgusted with the moral collapse of our institutions, but also I was kind of like, where is everybody? The arts, nobody's saying anything with the exception of a few people. And so when I thought about writing the song, the lyrics came very quickly. I kind of, the idea of it's a time for choosing, evil's on the march. They sound like cliches, but I think the lyrics came very quickly. The theme of "We're Not Okay" came from the Eric Adams speech, the mayor of New York, who, to his credit, very early after October 7th, kind of stood up and said, something's really wrong. We're not all right when we have people celebrating, these atrocities. So that idea stuck in my head. But when it came time to actually write the music, I didn't just sit down at the piano and go, okay, I know what I'm doing. I started listening to some, classical funeral marches. I knew the tone had to be, was critical. It's not going to be like Superman or Can One Man Save the World or 100 Years. It's like, what is the tone and what is the music? I kind of listened to the funeral marches. And ironically, I didn't realize till this happened, but after I'd kind of gotten going and had the music bed, I listened to I saw the original, the Blood on My Hands video, where there's some music before the song starts, kind of over some clips, and it was very similar to that, which was odd. So then the melody again was kind of visceral. I felt a scream. I can't sing like rock stars, and to scream that line was not necessarily a skill set, but I was screaming, and I just felt like nobody's hearing anything, and so that came, kind of viscerally. And then production-wise, I basically had the piano vocal and stuff, but I thought it was missing something. And I started listening back to some Jewish music and, Fiddler on the Roof and stuff like that. And you find a lot in Jewish music, like single string instruments, like a cello or a violin. So I reached out to one of my wizard genius cello players who came over, and he added that cello part, which I think really reflects the pain of the Jewish people. So and of course the video took 2 months because we had to get it right. So it was really a much longer process with this song than any of the other ones.
You mentioned the video. I think you could have gone in different directions with the video. But what you did, this assemblage of headlines, it's almost rat-a-tat-tat. It's, in a way, it's as ethereal and as haunting as the song is. The video is different. It's more, has a different tone, and it's fascinating to have those two together. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, it feels like a rebuke to anyone who denies the reality in our faces. The people like, I'll mention John Cusack, whose Twitter feed is exasperating, if not disgusting right now. There is the sense that people don't even know what's happening. And I think once you see those headlines, once you see them colliding together again and again and again, it's talk about visceral. It just seems like a punch in the gut. Was that your intention? How did you assemble it from that? I mean, what was your goal there?
I wanted it to be not my opinion. I wanted to just show what was happening. And I think by using a series of clips, headlines, certainly there was no kind of political lean to the video. It's just, this is what happened. Because not only do I think it's important for people to look at it now and be reminded of what's going on as everybody tries to shift the narrative, particularly the anti-Israel narrative, but I also think artists have an obligation for history. You look back and listen to songs from the 60s, you get a sense, and this is probably, a little arrogant, but I wanted a song that in 20, 30 years, when people are talking about what happened October 7th, at least there was one artist, songwriter's opinion that may be a little different from the rest, that people could watch and say, oh man, I didn't realize that happened. I didn't realize there were, Harvard, MIT presidents basically saying you have to have context for basically beheading babies and kidnapping grandmas. I didn't realize members of Congress were actually Hamas spokesmen. I didn't realize the media really had kind of lost their way. But I also wanted to recognize the heroes of what's happened. And, people like to call this a pro-Israel video, and I get it. But the hero of this video is a Palestinian woman. I had one lyric that was critical. We need every good woman, every good man. And I thought a lot about who do I put over that lyric? And there was a lot of candidates to put over that lyric. Mm-hmm. But I put a Palestinian woman who was calling out Hamas for stealing all the aid. Probably in Gaza. Probably one of the bravest things I've ever seen. I recognized the son of a Hamas leader who was saying we can't keep indoctrinating our kids, in this kind of death culture. So I wanted to actually recognize too those who are trying to make a change, that there is some hope at the end of the tunnel. So I didn't want to leave it so dark at the end. And the editor who did this, who put the images of, we start at the concert and then we end at the concert with the pictures of many of the hostages, on sticks in the field. I really thought that was a very powerful, circle to come to. And then, of course, I wanted a call to action. And the Martin Luther King quote that we all know of, basically I'm paraphrasing, but, if you're silent in the face of evil, you're complicit. I wanted to call out my industry, who has been deathly silent and cowardly. It's a historic shame, especially the music industry. There's a few folks in Hollywood, Patty Heaton, Deborah Messing, we can talk about them. But the music industry has had a historic moral collapse. I was honored to play the concert for New York. I saw the world come together. I saw artists come together. We are Sun City. We are Live Aid. We're supposed to be on the right side of history. And certainly, in this case, we are not.
Okay, then the big question there is an obvious one, and it's a one-word one. Why? Why would an industry that is so vocal, that is so passionate, that is so interested in social change, that is so quick to sing, to tweet, to act on social issues, how could they possibly be silent here? And I can't think of, I know there's some actors who have spoken out, like you mentioned. I can't off the top of my head even think of a musician who has been bold and upfront. And again, like you said, this doesn't have to be political. I mean, just speaking out against October 7th and the anti-Semitism across the country, it seems like the ultimate moral no-brainer. Why? Why is there such silence?
I think there are multiple answers, no good ones. I also think it's a sign of our moral collapse as a culture. It's just another symptom. You talk to some managers and folks, and I have, and there's certain iconic artists that in other times would be writing these songs. I'm like, where are they? And they say, well, they're scared. They're scared for their families. They're scared that their concerts will be protested, that their fans will be at risk. And that's true. I mean, I'm not going to say that's not true. I feel a little scared by putting this song out. I get it. But those are the same arguments people used in 1938, right? Those are the same arguments that led to the Holocaust. And the fact that there's not 1, 2, 3. I mean, U2, when it came out, they changed their lyric. Good props to them. They did something to recognize October 7th. But, agents are telling their artists to don't stir up the boat. If you're going to say anything, it has to be a morally equivalent statement. I think some are, I think the younger generation are either apathetic, or the younger artists, I think, have been kind of infected by this dogma of oppressor, oppressee. I think what you're seeing in colleges, TikTok. So a lot of the younger artists, I think, are caught up into this, kind of brainwashing that it's not about right versus wrong, good versus evil. It's about oppressed versus oppressor, perceived. So they're kind of just lost. It's funny, Christian, my son had a friend, and he was talking to his friend. So what do you think about Hamas and Israel? He's like, oh, I stand with Palestinians and Hamas. And he said, why? He said, well, it's mainstream. He said, it's mainstream. He didn't know anything about it, but all the information he was getting, anything he was seeing from the artists or TikTok, or, it was like, oh yeah, Israel's the oppressor, genocide, whatever. So if everybody's saying it, it must be true. And look, we know, one of our good pals, buddies, mentors, Andrew Breitbart always said, politics is downstream of culture. So when the culture is telling you that, oh, Israel's bad and they're genocidal, and these Hamas guys are just kind of, freedom fighters, trying to do the right thing, I think it's hard to get these folks to kind of have any kind of semblance of reality. So I think some of the younger artists are caught up in that, and I'm seeing that now. And then, many of the artists like Cusack, they're just kind of way far lefties. They're gonna, that's kind of their dogma. There's not much different between them and Rashida Tlaib. I think a lot of it is just kind of this ideology. I wouldn't say they're all anti-Semites, but at the end of the day, I never realized how many people hate Jews. When Israel shared my song, I got a small sense of the hatred, the vitriol, the death threats that Jewish people get. And it was an awakening for me. So I think with all these excuses I'm giving you, I do think there's some rampant anti-Semitism out there. And it's a shame. It's disgusting. And I wish we had a better answer, because why is the right question. And I'm going to be asking it this week at some Grammy events, and we'll see what the answer is from some other folks.
Oh, good luck with that process.
Yeah,
But thank you for doing that, because it is important. Over the years, or maybe more recent years, you have put your neck out in a way. Some of the protest songs, even when they're not overly political, as I don't think they are, you could read into them. Oh gosh, you're criticizing the Biden administration. Yeah. Are you finding any professional blowback for taking stances? Because again, I think if you look at your public comments, I think if you look at your videos, your music, it's certainly not aggressive. It's certainly not divisive. It's certainly well thought out. But I know how culture works these days. Are you feeling anything within your industry, in your space?
Yes. I mean, yes, we live in a tribal society. Much of the arts are far left. Is it anything that's like compares to what, Afghan girls, Ukrainians hostages, or it's like, in my mind, it's kind of trivial and goes with the ride. I mean, it has been interesting to see, when Blood in My Hands came out, it was embraced by the right and shunned by the left. We sent it to 400 music, publication outlets. None of them covered it. And I always kind of giggled about, well, if a Republican was in the White House, I wrote the same song and only the names would change, I'd probably be getting a Grammy this Sunday, So, and then it was when Come On Man Save the World came out, Good Morning America previewed that. And many on CNN had me on. And because that song, I think, was more akin to their ideology. And of course, many on the right did too, especially initially. I think the Republicans have lost their way on Ukraine in the last, year or two, some of them. And this song is, I think Blood in My Hands was kind of rejected because it was criticizing Biden. I think Can One Man Save the World was kind of embraced because, many Democrats support Ukraine, which is great. And this song also is very interesting. I think, again, the music press shunned it. We had one American songwriter wrote about it. But I also talked to some folks in some newsrooms. I'm not going to mention the names, but there's this fight within media, television platforms, and also music major platforms. One particularly, we sent it to them and they shared it with the whole office. And half the office came, to the editor and said, we have to talk about this. And the other half said, no way we're going to talk about this. And some of the other platforms, the older kind of producers are like, we have to talk about this. And the younger 20-somethings are like, what about the Palestinians? Not understanding that this really is a pro-Palestinian video as well. So I'm seeing the same fight we're seeing in all aspects of the culture. As I think Bill Maher said, he's right. It's like crazy versus normal. So I'm seeing that with this song too, but it's also got such a big traction that it's kind of hard to ignore. So it's been interesting to see, especially when Israel shared the song. I said it's a certain outlet that folks associate with music, who has a Jewish publisher, editor. And the fact to see many Jewish people in the media, there's an anchor that's been very, very vocal on the hostages, to see heads of, I'm not going to name names, but heads of music companies who are Jewish refuse to talk about not just my song, but to talk about October 7th. You have Jewish artists. There's a band called Haim, 3 Jewish girls. They haven't said anything because they're scared to death. And I don't blame them. I understand that. I understand they have families. I understand they'd be targets. But again, with each voice, it makes us all stronger, right? Courage is contagious, right? So with each voice, and that's why I'm working with a group run by David Renzer, who used to be a music publisher, Ari Engel, Community for Peace, that has many actors. They just wrote a letter today, basically calling out Sweden, Norway, and some other countries whose artists have a petition to ban Israel from Eurovision's, music contest. How sick is that?
Yeah.
How sick is that? But it's a reflection of, we are living in what I imagine was pre-Holocaust times, where things are happening. We're like, that's crazy. And then all of a sudden one day you have this thing. So there are groups, the AJC I'm talking to, Stand With Us I'm talking to. I'm trying to get out to the ADL. Because one thing, Christian, I think is really important to me is, this is not a political thing. If we can't come together and agree that Hamas is evil and condemn these acts, we have truly lost our soul. So it really, and the fact that Deborah Messing posted the song yesterday, that's a perfect example. She is about as far as left as you can be. I'm probably center right. Mark Levin posted the song. So if Mark Levin and Deborah Messing can post the same song, we understand what's going on. So anyways, that's a long answer to your question.
That's okay.
But we'll see, we'll see where it goes. Because in my mind, this song is kind of, and this mission is just getting started.
And what's fascinating is just the intersection of art and politics and culture. They're all one and the same, essentially. And I think your song, it wasn't the purpose of it, but I think inadvertently it's revealed so much. One of the things I want to talk to you about just briefly, because this is a point of that I need to remind people about. You were at some point associated with Friends of Abe. It's a right of center group in and around Hollywood, with people who were maybe right-leaning could get together. They could, socialize. They could share stories. But it was all about the fact that they didn't want to be public, because then they may face career retribution, whatever you want to call it. Is there anything you can share about that group? Because I just think it's so un-American that, listen, George Clooney is left of center, and he goes and he has fundraisers for Biden or Obama, and that's perfectly fine. It's the way our system works. But the fact that you couldn't be right of center and do the same for a McCain or a Trump or a Romney, it sickens me, and it feels like it's like this awful secret that's in plain sight. Any quick thoughts about Friends of Abe?
Yeah, there's no more intolerant group of people than the tolerance in Hollywood. They're massive hypocrites. They have a club, and we did have this group that started very small, and it was actually not just like conservatives, Christian conservatives, moderate Republicans, blue dog Democrats who were like, what happened to my party? And it would just be like a get together where people could feel that they could talk about what was going on in the world without having their job at risk. And there were a few like names, some folks that are, celebrities, but it wasn't about them, because if you're John Voight, you'll probably still get hired. But it was about cameramen, directors, makeup artists, and it grew to thousands of people. And we would have these kind of lunches, and people would go around the table and just talk about what they feel. And it would be like an AA meeting. People would cry. Just the fact that they could say what they feel without the fear of retribution. They're not blackballed in that we're firing you because you like George Bush. You just don't get hired for the next job. So it was really, really sad to see in this country, and especially in Hollywood, who likes to, put itself on the moral pedestal of, of look at us, we're the tolerance, we're the smart ones, listen to us. And it was a wonderful experience. And a lot of folks came out of that, friends of Abe, kind of Andrew Breitbart tree too, that are kind of running the conservative media right now. So it was wonderful to see how it kind of flourished. And but I miss those days. We still have little get-togethers, some of us once in a while. I was at the table when there was only 8 of us, and it grew to 25. So it was a special time.
Yeah. John, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, we talked so much about politics and Hamas, and I want to look at just briefly at your career, and I wish we had much more time, but you've done so much, pop hits, tours, you've become a protest singer in recent years, accidentally, just sort of by default in a way, just because the world around us. When you look at 2024 and beyond, how do you see yourself as an artist? Do you see your career evolving even more? Do you want to return to your roots? As an artist, what's next for you? What would you like to do? And hopefully the world events won't force you back into the studio again.
Yeah, I mean, I never had any idea I'd write a song like Blood in My Hands. And after I wrote that, I'm like, thank God I never have to do that again. And then here comes Ukraine. And after that, thank God I never have to do that again. And then this one. I disdain celebrities who get on their moral soapbox and lecture to us. And I kind of feel like uncomfortable writing these songs, but I also feel obligated in a certain way, especially because for some folks, it makes a difference. For the Afghanistan song, to see that our troops, especially our Afghan vets, were so moved by the song because somebody was saying something that was gutting them that no one else was saying. So it's like, okay, I'm not crazy. Somebody feels what I'm feeling. I've gotten thousands of emails and comments from Jewish people over the last week saying the same thing of like, thank you for just saying this. I mean, we feel abandoned. Where is everybody? Everybody we look up to, our favorite singers, we feel abandoned. So I see how these songs can provide some solace to people. And also I can see, how it plays a part in the culture war. When I'm on these big shows and I'm a seat at the table and I'm saying something I think that other folks should be saying, and maybe this will lead to bigger things. But Christian, I'm definitely not in the protest song, activist song business. I'd love to write just a little simple record.
Yeah.
I'm grateful to tour and have people buy tickets and do this. I also have many things in my life outside of music that take a lot of my time, family and family business. So it is a strange time for me, but I still do love writing songs, and I love singing them, and I love performing and being with people, and the people I meet, through the Afghanistan song, our Green Berets, these heroes, these NGOs that rescued Americans, to go to Ukraine, meet some of these incredible Ukrainian musicians and generals, and with this one, to meet incredible Israelis and Jewish folks and people who spend their life doing the right thing. I spend 2 months writing a song and a couple months on the TV. These people spend their lives doing this. So to support them and to shine the light on them, that is a blessing out of all this stuff.
Yeah, and I imagine on some level, just knowing these people, having these conversations, it may influence you as a songwriter down the road in ways you never expected. You become a richer person, and the songs maybe get a more of an intensity that you never expected. So that's always possible as well. But John, thank you so much for joining the Hitcast. The new song is okay. It's beautiful, it's haunting, and it's necessary, as we've just described. You can see the video at 5forfighting.com. Yes, John's a big hockey fan. That is his band name. It is wonderful. And of course, you could also find upcoming tour dates, looking ahead to the rest of 2024. And I'm hoping that may include a Colorado visit, because you owe us one. John, just speaking very personally and very selfishly, no pressure, but we appreciate all that you do.
Christian, you are always on the guest list. I appreciate what you do. There are so few voices that do what you do, that have the courage to what you do. It's a critical message to talk about the arts in kind of a conservative philosophy. So thank you for what you do. It's always a pleasure to be on your podcast.
Oh, thanks so much. Cancel culture has a funny relationship with the comedy classic Blazing Saddles. It seems like the most obvious, most likely movie to get attacked or censored or targeted, something. It had a lot of use of the N-word, outrageous humor, gay jokes. It's a Mel Brooks movie. It's what he does. He pushes the envelope. Now, Brooks himself has said over and again, you couldn't make this film today. He's right, of course. You couldn't go near this film today.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Yet the woke mob hasn't attacked the movie. They've taken a hands-off attitude on Blazing Saddles. They've canceled other films. They've eliminated some shows that had blackface episodes in them. But Blazing Saddles still stands tall. You have to ask yourself why. I have a couple ideas. One is, I think every freedom-friendly person in America keeps pointing at Blazing Saddles and says, you can't make it today. I dare you to cancel this movie. This is the ultimate target for cancel culture. And I think all the woke mob members are like, what do we do? Do we attack? Do we not attack? I feel weird. Or they may do it eventually. The great Mel Brooks is in his 90s now. He seems like he's forever young. He's sharp. He's funny as ever. He can't live forever. Maybe they wait till he passes on and then a few months later attack his film. You never know. Well, that's what I thought. But it turns out the waiting game for when cancel culture is going to attack this movie, well, it's over. Now, I don't have an exact date on this, but the streaming platform Max, well, they just put a trigger warning of sorts on the movie. If you want to see Blazing Saddles on that platform, you have to sit through a lecture from TCM's Jacqueline Stewart. Talks about the movie, when it came out, the stars, a little bit of the backstory, its humor. Well, why? Well, the elites think you're dumb. You can't figure this stuff out for yourself.
As the storyline implies, the issue of race is front and center in Blazing Saddles, and racist language and attitudes pervade the film. But those attitudes are espoused by characters who are explicitly portrayed here as narrow-minded, ignorant bigots. The film's real and much more enlightened perspective is represented by the two main characters, played by Cleavon Little and Gene Wilder.
All right, Jacqueline, what's the problem? It didn't sound like you were describing something that needed a warning label. Why are we all upset? Why do I have to watch this before I watch the movie? I mean, Max doesn't even have the cojones to say the movie should be canceled or censored or some sort of outrageous action against it. It knows that Mel Brooks was what he was doing with this movie, what he had in mind, and how expertly he applied his satirical skills to the project. We all know that. This trigger warning is funny in that it doesn't even go the full Disney. Here's what Disney said about the film classic Dumbo and Peter Pan on Disney+. This program includes negative depictions and/or mistreatment of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Rather than remove this content, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversation to create a more inclusive future together. That's pure cowardice, man. No one was offended by Dumbo then or now. They weren't impacted in any way, shape, or form by a cartoon. Give me a break. Just virtue signaling, that's all. They're covering their bases. As far as Max goes, yeah, this was the streaming platform that actually removed Gone with the Wind for a while. That too was problematic. Well, this entire episode of Blazing Saddles, it's just plain embarrassing. Let's shame them into taking it away. Let's bring Blazing Saddles back and laugh all over again at Max and the film. All right, before we wrap things up, I wanted to get back to that trivia question. Why was the actress who said, "I'll have what she's having" in Harry Met Sally so important to the film? Well, we wouldn't have director Rob Reiner without her. Yeah, that was Estelle Riner, the director's mother, who nailed that immortal line. Now, Estelle Riner, who passed away a few years ago, had a little bit of a film career. She had 8 official screen credits, but none were as good or as memorable as that moment. Well, that's it for the show this week. Thank you to Radio America, as always, for having me as part of their great podcast lineup. And before I let you go, I hope you'll drop by HollywoodInToto.com. I update that site 7 days a week. You've got news, reviews, commentary, everything that's going on in Hollywood. It, like the show, is the right take on entertainment and woke-free since 2014. See you next time.